The space station Vanguard drifted silently in the darkened orbit of a forgotten moon, its once shining hull now dulled by years of neglect. Rhea Jackson stood at the observation deck, her eyes fixed on the distant horizon where the light of the nearest star barely pierced the inky blackness. There was a strange kind of stillness here, one that made the hairs on the back of her neck prickle. It was as though the entire universe had forgotten this place, and perhaps that was for the best. "Captain, we've reached the coordinates." "No signs of Federation activity," came the voice of Lieutenant Cole, breaking the silence. His face was illuminated only by the soft glow of his terminal, a young man with sharp features and a nervous edge. Rhea didn't blame him. This mission was unlike any they'd run before. It reeked of danger, of something ancient and hidden, something humanity was not meant to find. "Understood, Cole. Prepare the team for deployment. I don't want surprises." Rhea's tone was steady, but the uncertainty gnawed at her. They had been hunting whispers for months. Whispers of an ancient human weapon, buried deep within the ruins of Earth. No one knew if the rumors were true, but Rhea couldn't shake the feeling that their future depended on what they would uncover here. The team assembled in the docking bay, the sound of boots clanging against the metal floor filling the tense air. Sergeant Aldrin, a hulking figure with a face carved from years of war, nodded at Rhea as she walked past. His expression, as always, was unreadable, but she knew he had the same unease in his gut. "You ready for this, Captain?" he asked, his deep voice like a rumble in the distance. "We don't have a choice," Rhea replied curtly, tightening her grip on her rifle. "Let's move out." The airlock hissed open, and the team filed out onto the surface of Vanguard, the cold expanse of the station stretching out before them. The remains of old human technology littered the station, forgotten relics of a time when humanity had dared to reach for the stars. Now, all that was left were rusted machinery and brittle memories. Rhea led the way, her boots crunching against the thin layer of dust that had accumulated over centuries. "Captain," Cole called from behind, his voice tinged with disbelief. "I'm picking up something. A signal. It's faint, but it's there." Rhea's heart skipped a beat. "Can you trace it?" "I'm trying. It's not on any Federation frequency." Cole's voice trailed off, absorbed in his work. "It's old. Really old. Almost like it's been waiting." Rhea's stomach tightened. It could only mean one thing. The whispers were true. "Keep at it. We need to know where it's coming from," she ordered, quickening her pace. They reached a vast chamber deep within the station, its walls covered in strange markings and symbols that Rhea had never seen before. The air was thick, almost oppressive, as if the very space around them was holding its breath. At the center of the room stood a pedestal, its surface cracked and worn by time. Upon it rested a small, cylindrical object, its surface glowing faintly. Rhea stepped forward, her hand hovering over the artifact. A strange energy seemed to pulse from it, making the hairs on her arms stand on end. She could feel the weight of history pressing down on her. This wasn't just a weapon, it was something much older, much more powerful. "Captain, the signal!" Cole's voice crackled from behind. "It's coming from the artifact. It's activating." The moment his words hit her ears, the artifact flared to life, the glow intensifying until it was almost blinding. Rhea stumbled back, her breath catching in her throat as the room filled with a low hum, like the pulse of an ancient heart. "Stay back!" Rhea shouted, her instincts kicking in as she raised her weapon. But the artifact didn't respond to the threat, it seemed to welcome it, pulling the team closer with an irresistible force. Sergeant Aldrin, usually unshaken, looked uneasy. "What the hell is this thing?" "I don't know," Rhea muttered, stepping closer to inspect the object. The symbols around the pedestal seemed to shift, forming new patterns with each passing second. It was as if the artifact itself was alive, adapting, reacting to their presence. "What if this is the weapon?" Cole's voice was filled with awe. "What if it's the answer?" Rhea finished for him, her voice a whisper of realization. This was it, the key to humanity's return. The Federation had always seen them as weak, a scattered, fractured people without purpose. But this artifact held the power to change everything. It had been hidden for a reason. Humanity had been forgotten, but the universe had underestimated them. We need to get it back to the ship, Rhea said, her tone firm as she pulled away from the pedestal, the artifact now nestled securely in her pack. This is the edge we've been looking for. Just as she turned to lead the team out of the room, a sharp, metallic clang echoed through the station. The sound was followed by the unmistakable hiss of airlocks opening. Rhea froze, her instincts screaming that they weren't alone. Federation, Aldrin muttered, his hand going to the holster of his sidearm. Prepare for contact. Everyone stay sharp, Rhea ordered, her voice low but commanding. They couldn't afford to be caught off guard. Not now. Not with humanity's future hanging in the balance. The station had been abandoned. But it wasn't anymore. Someone knew they were here, and they had come for the artifact. Rhea's fingers tightened around her weapon. The first shots were fired, and the war for humanity's place in the galaxy had begun. The Vanguard shuddered as the Federation assault force hit their position. Rhea Jackson stood at the command console of the bridge, her fingers dancing across the controls as alarms blared around her. The soft, rhythmic thrum of the ship's engines was drowned out by the chaos that now consumed the space station. Status? Rhea barked. We've got incoming, 6 Federation ships, all heavily armed, Cole reported, his voice tight with urgency. They're not here for negotiations, Captain. Then they're here for a fight, Rhea said grimly, her eyes scanning the holographic display of their surroundings. The Federation wasn't wasting any time. They knew what they were after. The artifact they had uncovered on the Vanguard wasn't just a relic, it was a game-changer. And they would stop at nothing to reclaim it. Captain, we've got movement in the docking bay. Sergeant Aldrin's deep voice came through the comms. They're boarding the station. Rhea's gaze hardened. Prepare for an ambush. Lock down all access points. We can't afford to lose the artifact. She turned toward the rest of the crew, rallying them with her commanding presence. This is our moment. We make a stand here, or we lose everything. As the sound of boots echoed through the halls of the Vanguard, Rhea's mind raced. The artifact had awakened something inside her. A spark she hadn't felt in years. But she couldn't do this alone. She needed to rally the scattered human factions across the galaxy, and she needed to do it fast. The Federation would be relentless, and time was running out. The next day, in the quiet aftermath of the station's successful defense, Rhea sat in the dimly lit command room, the weight of the situation sinking in. She was no longer just the captain of a small resistance faction, she was the leader of something far larger. The artifact had given them a glimpse of humanity's potential, but now they had to unlock that power. And they couldn't do it alone. The galaxy was a vast and broken place, filled with scattered remnants of human colonies, all hiding in the shadows of alien empires. Rhea knew that to win, she had to unite those fractured pieces, bring them together under one banner. She turned to her second-in-command, Lieutenant Cole, who had been at her side since the beginning. We need to reach out, Rhea said, her voice steady but urgent. We can't win this fight with just a handful of ships. We need every human colony, every survivor, every rebel we can find. They need to know what we have, what we're capable of. Cole nodded, tapping on his console. I'm already compiling a list of the largest human factions in the sector. Some of them are going to be hard to convince. The Federation's propaganda has been effective. We don't have the luxury of time. You make them see the truth, or we'll never have a chance. Rhea replied, her eyes narrowing. The Federation wants to bury us. But they've underestimated us. We have more than they think, and I'm going to make sure the galaxy knows it. Rhea's plan was simple. Hit hard, hit fast, and show the galaxy that humanity was no longer a passive species. Her first target was the Solace Network, a large faction of former Earth colonists who had been living under the radar for decades. Their leader, a woman named Captain Leah Durant, had a reputation for being as elusive as she was deadly. If anyone knew how to resist the Federation, it was her. A day later, Rhea stood on the command deck of the Vanguard, staring at the swirling clouds of the gas giant where the Solace network was rumored to be hiding. It was a dangerous place, full of pirate ships and hostile factions, but it was their best chance. "Captain, we're nearing the coordinates," Cole said, breaking her focus. "No Federation ships in sight, but it's hard to tell in the storm." "We don't need Federation ships," Rhea replied, her eyes glinting with determination. "We just need Durant. Bring us in close." The Solace network's base was hidden within the storm's depths, a series of underground bunkers and converted mining stations. When they made their approach, the Vanguard was immediately hailed by a sharp, military voice. "This is Captain Durant of the Solace network. State your business." Rhea stepped forward, her tone clear and unwavering. "I'm Captain Rhea Jackson. I represent a new resistance movement, one that's ready to fight back against the Federation. We have the means to change the balance of power. But we need your help." For a long moment, there was only silence. Rhea could hear the low hum of the station's engines in the background, the weight of the pause heavy in the air. Then, Durant's voice returned, tinged with skepticism. "And why would we help you, Captain Jackson? The Federation controls everything. It's not just about the battles anymore, it's about survival." "I know the Federation," Rhea said, leaning closer to the comms. "I've seen what they do to people like us. And I've found something that can give us the power to stop them. We can win this. But we need to unite. All of us." Another long pause, but this time, Rhea could hear the faintest crack in Durant's resolve. "You've got 5 minutes to explain," Durant said, finally relenting. On the surface of the Solace network's base, Rhea stood with Durant, a tall, imposing figure who had once been a high-ranking officer in the Federation before turning her back on them. Durant's eyes narrowed as Rhea explained their discovery of the artifact and the true power it contained. "I didn't believe it at first," Durant said, her voice soft but firm. "But I've heard the rumors. I've seen what the Federation is capable of. If this artifact is real, then we might actually stand a chance. But you're asking a lot, Captain." "I'm not asking for a fleet or an army," Rhea said, meeting Durant's gaze. "I'm asking for allies. We need your people, your resources. Together, we can change the galaxy." Durant studied her for a moment, then nodded. "All right, Jackson. You've got your allies. But don't think for a second that this will be easy. It never is," Rhea replied, offering a rare smile. "But it's worth fighting for." With that, the first step toward uniting humanity had been taken. Rhea wasn't sure where this path would lead, but one thing was certain: humanity was no longer willing to be a pawn. The Federation had underestimated them. Now they were about to learn just how wrong they were. The Vanguard lurched violently as the first wave of Federation assault ships exploded into the outer edges of their fleet, showering debris into the void. Rhea Jackson's heart raced as she watched the holographic display blink red, signaling an incoming barrage. The Federation hadn't wasted time. They were closing in fast. "Shields holding at 60%, Captain," Cole reported, his hands flying over the control panel as he worked to keep the ship steady. "They've got us in a crossfire. We're taking hits from all sides." "Return fire," Rhea snapped, her eyes narrowing with cold determination. "We can't outrun them. It's time to show them what we're made of." The Federation was here. And they weren't going to stop until they had the artifact, and humanity, crushed beneath their heel. The battle raged for hours, the Vanguard moving with deadly precision despite the constant assault. Rhea's crew was well trained, but they were outnumbered. As the last of the Federation ships closed in, Rhea's mind raced with plans for escape. They had to survive, at all costs. But survival alone wouldn't be enough anymore. The Federation had made their move, and now humanity had to respond. The quiet after the storm was deafening. The sound of distant alarms and the hum of damaged systems were the only things left to fill the empty void in the aftermath of the battle. The Vanguard limped to a nearby moon, where Rhea called an emergency meeting in the ship's war room. The crew was exhausted, battered by the conflict, but their spirits were still intact. For now. Rhea stood at the head of the table, flanked by Cole, Aldrin, and several other key officers. The map of the galaxy flickered on the table before them, showing the vast expanse of enemy territory and the growing number of Federation forces advancing toward their location. But there was something new in the air. A new resolve. "We survived, but this was just a skirmish," Rhea began, her voice steady but hard. "The Federation knows we're here, and they'll come for us again. Harder next time." Aldrin, his face etched with scars from the previous battle, spoke up, his voice rough. "We've got the Solace network, but we need more than just them. We need more ships, more firepower. We can't fight the whole Federation on our own." Rhea's eyes flicked to the map as she considered their options. "We've got to expand. But it won't be easy. The Federation's propaganda has divided humanity. They've made us believe we're weak, that we're nothing. We need to change that. Most human factions are scattered, fractured," Cole added, his brow furrowed. "Even if we rally them, getting them to act together is a different story. That's why we need something big," Rhea said, leaning forward. "Something that will make the galaxy stand up and take notice." She paused for a moment, the weight of what she was about to suggest heavy in the air. "We need to make the Federation bleed. Hit them where it hurts." The next few days were a blur of strategic planning and covert operations. Rhea had formulated a plan, one that involved a series of coordinated strikes against Federation supply lines, targeting key military installations and resources. It was a risky move, but it had the potential to cripple the Federation's ability to maintain their war machine. "Captain, we've got a location on one of their supply depots," Cole said, pulling up a new set of coordinates. "It's a high-risk target, but if we can take it out, it'll disrupt their entire supply chain in this sector." Rhea nodded, her mind already working through the implications. "Do it. Assemble the fleet. We hit them tonight." It was a gamble, one that could either set them back or push them forward. But Rhea wasn't in the business of waiting. The Federation had shown its hand. It was time for humanity to show theirs. The assault on the Federation depot was swift and brutal. The Vanguard led the charge, followed closely by a handful of human ships from the Solace network and other allied factions. They descended upon the depot in the dead of night, catching the Federation off guard. The Federation forces, normally so calculated and controlled, found themselves scrambling to respond to the sudden onslaught. Explosions rocked the depot's outer perimeter, sending plumes of fire and smoke into the sky. Rhea's team infiltrated the facility, disabling communication systems and setting charges on key supply hubs. For once, humanity wasn't the underdog. They were the storm. "We've got them on the ropes, Captain!" Aldrin shouted into the comms as he and his team stormed through the depot's central command center. "One more push, and they'll be done." But the victory was short-lived. "Captain?" Cole's voice cut through the chaos. "Incoming reinforcements. Federation's bringing in heavy artillery. This isn't just a raid. They're calling in everything they've got." Rhea's stomach dropped as she looked at the sky. Federation warships, massive and imposing, emerged from the dark clouds above the depot. The Federation wasn't going to let this humiliation slide. "We're outnumbered," Rhea muttered, her fingers tightening on the console. "Abort the mission. Fall back to the ship." But even as the order left her lips, she knew it was too late. The Federation had already committed everything they had to this battle. And retreating wasn't an option. "Stand your ground!" Rhea shouted, her voice booming through the comms. "We finish this, now!" The battle turned into a deadly dance between the Vanguard and the Federation's forces, a chaotic clash of firepower and willpower. Rhea's heart pounded in her chest as her ship dodged fire from the Federation warships, returning blasts with equal intensity. The odds were stacked against them, but Rhea wasn't ready to give up yet. Not after everything they had fought for. "We need to take out their command ship," Rhea said, scanning the holographic map. "That's where the Federation is coordinating everything. We're not going to last long enough to get to it," Cole said, his voice filled with anxiety. "We need more firepower, more ships." Rhea didn't hesitate. "We'll get that firepower. Call in reinforcements. We fight for every inch. Just when it seemed like the battle would slip away from them, the unexpected happened. The Solace Network and their allies, hearing the call to arms, arrived just in time. A fleet of ships, human ships, with their makeshift weaponry and crude designs, dropped out of hyperspace, catching the Federation off guard. The Federation's superiority was slipping. The battle shifted. Rhea's ship surged forward, her crew fighting with renewed determination. The Federation may have had numbers, but humanity had the will to fight, and now they had a taste of victory. The Federation had underestimated them. And now, humanity had the chance to show the galaxy that they were more than just a footnote in the history of the stars. They were here to stay. The battle had raged for hours, but now, amidst the wreckage of Federation warships and the debris of shattered space stations, there was an eerie silence. Rhea Jackson stood on the bridge of the Vanguard, her gaze fixed on the void. The sound of alarms had finally stopped, and for the first time in what felt like forever, she could hear her own breath. "Status?" she asked, her voice low but steady. "We've won, Captain," Cole replied, his voice thick with disbelief. "They're retreating. The Federation forces are pulling back, and the remaining ships are in disarray." Rhea didn't respond right away. She had been expecting this. She knew the Federation would strike back hard, but she hadn't anticipated how quickly the tide would turn. Humanity had fought back and survived, but this wasn't a victory. Not yet. She turned to face her crew. "We've shown them that we can fight, but that's not enough. We need more. The Federation will come back, and they won't be satisfied until we're wiped out. This isn't over." Aldrin's gravelly voice cut through the air. "What's the next step, Captain?" "We've taken down their supply depot, but they're not going to let that slide." Rhea's jaw tightened as she considered their options. There was no going back now. The galaxy had been watching, and now they would have to do what humanity had never dared before: take the fight directly to the heart of the Federation. "We go on the offensive," Rhea said, her eyes glinting with determination. "We don't wait for them to strike first. We take the fight to their doorstep." Days later, the Vanguard and its fleet of human ships were stationed at the edge of Federation space, staring into the unknown. The plan was risky. Facing off against the full might of the Federation was no small task, but Rhea knew that if humanity was to have a future, they couldn't afford to wait in hiding any longer. "We're close," Cole said, glancing up from his terminal. "We've got the coordinates for the Federation's Central Command Station. It's heavily fortified, but we've got the element of surprise." Rhea stood at the command center, her thoughts racing. If they succeeded, it would cripple the Federation's ability to respond. But failure meant total annihilation. There was no middle ground. "This is it," she said, her voice low. "We hit them hard and fast. Once we take down their central command, we destabilize their entire structure. They won't be able to regroup in time." As the Vanguard moved toward its target, the tension among the crew was palpable. There was no going back now. They were about to face their greatest challenge yet, and each of them knew that their survival depended on success. Rhea moved through the ship, her eyes catching the faces of her crew, those who had fought and bled for this moment. The hope in their eyes was tempered by fear, but there was something else there too. A fire. A belief that they had the power to change their fate. "Captain!" Aldrin's voice pulled her from her thoughts. He stood near the weapons station, his expression grim. "We've got Federation ships approaching fast. They're coming in at full speed." Rhea's heart skipped a beat. "How many?" "At least 10, maybe more." "Heavy cruisers," Aldrin replied, his hands working quickly to calculate their movements. "They've detected us. We don't have much time." Rhea exhaled slowly, gathering herself. "They can't stop us. Prepare for battle. All ships, full speed ahead." The battle was as fierce as Rhea had expected. The Federation had mobilized its fleet in record time, throwing everything they had at the human resistance. The Vanguard danced through the enemy fire, evading blasts while retaliating with lethal precision. The human ships, though outnumbered, fought like rabid wolves, determined, desperate, and unwilling to back down. On the bridge, Ria's hands moved over the controls with practiced ease. She could hear the battle outside, the sounds of explosions and the roar of weapons fire as if the galaxy itself was cracking apart. But she kept her focus. The Federation's forces were formidable, but humanity had something they didn't: resilience. "We're getting closer to the command station," Cole shouted, his voice barely audible over the chaos. "We'll need to make a direct assault if we're going to break through their defenses." Ria nodded. "Prepare the boarding teams. We'll hit them from within. Take the command station, and the rest of their fleet will be scattered." The final approach was a blur of adrenaline and chaos. The Vanguard and its fleet of human ships plunged through the Federation defenses, dodging blasts and returning fire. The massive central command station loomed ahead, its immense structure surrounded by a cloud of debris and broken ships. "Now!" Ria ordered. The human ships tore into the station's outer defenses, punching through the shield layers with expert precision. In the midst of the madness, Ria's ship shot forward, docking with the command station's central core. The moment the airlock sealed, Ria's team stormed onto the station's control deck, guns drawn and hearts racing. The Federation officers, caught off guard by the sudden assault, scrambled to retaliate. But the humans were relentless. Ria led her team forward, cutting down any resistance in their path. They had one goal: to reach the heart of the station and destroy its core systems. "Captain, we're at the central control room." Aldrin's voice crackled through her comms. "We've got eyes on the command center. The Federation's top brass is holed up inside." Ria's pulse quickened. This was it. The Federation's leadership, the architects of humanity's suffering, were within reach. She motioned for her team to advance. The control room was heavily guarded, but Ria's team was better. They breached the doors, overwhelming the Federation officers inside. The commanding officers, once so confident in their empire's invincibility, now looked like animals cornered in a cage. "Ria Jackson," one of them sneered, his voice dripping with disdain. "You think you've won? This is just the beginning. You can't stop the Federation. We are the galaxy's future." Ria's gaze was cold as she stepped forward, her gun aimed squarely at the officer's chest. "The Federation is finished," she said, her voice quiet but deadly. "Humanity isn't your future. We are." With a single pull of the trigger, she silenced the officer. The room fell still. Ria looked around at her team. They had done it. The central command was theirs. Outside the station, the Federation fleet was in disarray. The Vanguard and its fleet had crippled their command structure, throwing the enemy into chaos. Ria's heart pounded as she took a moment to process what had just happened. They had done the impossible. They had struck at the heart of the Federation. Humanity had never been the underdog. Not anymore. They had shown the galaxy their true power, and the Federation would never be the same again. "We've won this battle," Ria said, her voice calm but filled with pride. "But this is just the beginning." And she was right. The galaxy would never forget the day humanity unleashed its true power. The Federation had learned the hard way: never underestimate a species that refuses to stay silent.